Geography previous year questions discussion. Now, first one is what is geostrophic wind? We need to explain the geostrophic wind and what is the relationship between the barometric slope and air circulation. What is the relationship between slope and air circulation? Right. Now, first, what is geostrophic wind? Here, winds are a crucial part of the meteorology that describe the horizontal wind velocity in the upper atmosphere under the influence of the balance between the pressure gradient force and then we have the Coriolis force, right? When there is a balance between the pressure gradient force and we have the Coriolis force, we have the geostrophic winds which are at the upper atmosphere. They are high velocity winds which are at the upper atmosphere, right? Now, what is pressure gradient force? Pressure gradient force is nothing but the friction. There exists friction between the winds which are moving and the surface of the earth. So, when the pressure gradient force and the Coriolis force are at a balance with each other, they will be having the geostrophic wind. In simple terms, it is the wind that results from the balance between the pressure gradient force, which is the force that causes air to move from the high to the low pressure areas. Right. Now, air moves from the high pressure to low pressure areas. There is a force between this high pressure and the low pressure areas, and because of this force, this is what we be having the pressure gradient force. Pressure gradient force, when there is a force between high pressure to the low pressure areas, there is a force which is called as a pressure gradient force, and it causes the movement of the air from the high pressure to the low pressure areas. Then we have the Coriolis effect. Now, this Coriolis effect, which is apparent deflection of the moving air caused by the Earth's rotation. Here they have also discussed what is a Coriolis force. The Coriolis force is also the deflection of the moving air. So here we will be having the deflection of the moving air is what we have the Coriolis force. This deflection is due to the rotation of the earth. Rotation of the earth causes such a kind of the deflection, right? Now, the relationship between the barometric slope and air circulation is an integral to the understanding the geostrophic winds. Barometric slopes is the variation in the atmospheric pressure over the different distance. When you go up, there is a variation in the pressure, right? That is what we call it as the barometric slope. The pressure difference is what we cause the air to drive. It creates a force. Here it creates a force which drives the air movement, and when in balance with the Coriolis force, it gives rise to the geostrophic winds, right? Influencing large scale pressure, weather patterns and circulation systems on the earth. Exploring this relationship enhances our comprehension of atmospheric dynamics and contributes to accurate weather forecasting. When we are going for a recap now, what is a geostrophic wind? It describes the horizontal wind velocity, right? The horizontal wind velocity in the upper atmosphere. This is under the influence of a balance between pressure gradient and Coriolis force. In simpler terms, if we are saying that it is the wind, that the wind is because of a balance between the pressure gradient force, which is the force that causes air to move from high pressure to low pressure areas, and Coriolis effect is the deflection of the moving wind caused by the rotation of the earth. The relationship between the barometric slope and air circulation. Now, what is barometric slope? Barometric slope is the variation in the atmospheric pressure over the distance. The variation in the pressure over the difference. Barometer is an instrument which is used to measure pressure, right? So, when barometric slope is the variation in the pressure with respect to distance. This pressure difference, when there is a pressure difference, it creates a force. Pressure difference is what creates a force to drive the air movement, And when there is a balance with the Coriolis force and geostrophic wind, we have large scale weather patterns, circulation systems on the earth. Right. Now, the air blowing above the ground or the water surfaces, generally between the altitude of 500 to 1000 meters, parallel to the isobars and at right angle to the pressure gradient, are called as the geostrophic winds. Example for the geostrophic winds is what we have: the jet streams, Rossby waves, upper tropospheric westerlies, etc. So these are the examples. What they say is the air is blowing above the surface, therefore there is no frictional force, right? The air is blowing above the surface because there is no frictional force, and altitude is in meters, 500 to 1000 meters, and they are parallel to the isobars. Isobars are areas of equal pressure. Equal pressure is what we have, the isobars. They are parallel to the isobars and they are right angle to the pressure gradient. They are at right angle to the pressure gradient, and then we have Coriolis force, pressure gradient, geostrophic winds. Right, they are right angle to the pressure gradient. At right angle to the pressure gradient is called the geostrophic winds. First, we say that the altitude and it is in right angle. We need to say the altitude and it is in the right angle to the pressure gradient. It is called as geostrophic winds. Example of the geostrophic winds is jet streams, Rossby wave and upper tropospheric westerlies. Now, as of now, we have discussed what is a geostrophic wind. If we go for a recap for this first question, what is a geostrophic wind, right? How do you write this? You have to write on your own words, right? How do you remember this? Geostrophic wind in itself is a product of pressure gradient. It is not a it is because of the influence of pressure gradient force and Coriolis effect, right? So we need to mention this first. Now here it is a wind. This wind is horizontal. This wind is what? How in the direction? This wind is a horizontal wind, right? Horizontal wind velocity, it is of high velocity in the upper atmosphere. This is under the influence of a balance. Now we say that there is a balance. The balance is between the pressure gradient force and then we have Coriolis effect. Now when you need to explain the pressure gradient force is the force which causes air. The force is causing the air to move. A force is causing the air to move from high pressure to low pressure areas. Coriolis effect is nothing but a deflection. So what is pressure gradient? Pressure gradient is a force, whereas Coriolis is a deflection. We go for Coriolis is a deflection of moving air. It is caused by the Earth's rotation. Due to Earth's rotational speed, the air gets deflected, right? This is what we say, it is a Coriolis force. Now what is barometric slope and air circulation? The next part, right? Barometric slope and air circulation. Now barometric slope is nothing but the variation in the atmospheric movements, a variation in atmospheric pressure over the distance. Barometric slope is the variation in the pressure. The pressure keeps on varying, right? Barometric slope over a distance. This pressure difference is causing the air to move from high pressure to low pressure, and when there is a balance with the Coriolis force, here balance is important, we get the geostrophic wind, right? Now, a perfect definition of geostrophic wind is that they are at an altitude of 500. Two things are required for it. Altitude is a definition, right? And then we have altitude is a definition, and then we'll be having the right angle. The altitude is going to be 500 to 1000 meters and they are at right angle to the pressure gradient. They are at right angle, they go right angle to the pressure gradient. These are called as a geostrophic wind. Example for the geostrophic wind is what we call it as a jet streams, Rossby waves, and upper tropospheric westerlies. So we have to be very clear with respect to the examples. We call the jet streams as an example, and we also have the Rossby waves. Rossby waves, and in the upper troposphere we have a westerlies, upper tropospheric westerlies, right. Now, what is the relationship between the barometric slope and air circulation? Air movement follows a barometric slope. It depends on the steepness of the gradient. The steeper, the higher the rate of the movement, and vice versa. When it is very steep, the pressure gradient, higher the movement of the air, right. The steeper the pressure gradient, higher the rate of the movement of the air. So this is the relationship between the barometric and air circulation. The first keyword is steeper. Steeper air movement, it follows a slope. So the air which moves, it follows a slope. Air follows a slope, a barometric slope. It depends on the steepness of the pressure gradient. Air follows a slope. This is going to depends, the slope is going to depends on the steepness of gradients, right. Now the steepness, again the steepness in barometric slope and with conditions of low friction, plus we are also giving a mention about the friction, plus there is a low friction, increases the air movement. With approaching distance, it gets deflected due to strong Coriolis force, and wind crosses the isobars or acute angle along the latitude. Now we need to have steepness, right. Apart from steepness, what do we want? Let's go for this. Steepness, apart from the steepness, what do we want? We want a low friction. Apart from steepness, we want low friction. And when there is low friction, with distance, it gets deflected due to a strong Coriolis force, and wind crosses isobars at acute angle along the latitudes. When you go with respect to the latitudes from here to here, you have high Coriolis effect. A strong Coriolis effect, right. Now this strong Coriolis effect, it gets deflected, and when it crosses the isobars at acute angle, it is going to cross the isobars at an acute angle. There is a slight diffraction is what they are telling. It is deflected because of the Coriolis force. Now we have to, first we have mentioned the steepness of the pressure gradients, then we go for the Coriolis force, low friction, right. Now here we say that when they are deflected with a low Coriolis force, examples are upper tropospheric westerlies and jet streams. Now frictional force works in opposition to the barometric slope and hence against horizontal movement of the air. It reduces the wind speed and Coriolis effect, thus it leads to the formation of, suddenly it becomes thunderstorms and local winds, right, because of the effect of the frictional force. Frictional force, if this is the barometric slope, here it works in the opposite direction, right. When you, as you go down, the frictional force is going to increases because you get contact with the surface. So the frictional force is always in opposite direction to the barometric slope, and frictional force is in opposition to the barometric slope, right. Hence against the horizontal, it is against the horizontal movement of the air. Now we have the vertically, we have a barometric slope. The frictional force is going to work opposition to the barometric slope and hence against the horizontal movement of the air. It reduces the wind velocity. And a Coriolis effect, frictional force is going to reduces the wind velocity, and then we have the Coriolis effect, and thus it leads to the formation of the thunderstorms and local winds. Gradient winds, barometric slope, Coriolis force, centripetal force, frictional force, as and these all result in the gradient wind. Example, cyclonic conditions are known as subgeostrophic winds, where centripetal force strengthens the pressure gradient force, countering the Coriolis force. Now we go for another concept called as a gradient winds, right? The barometric, we have a slope, and also we have the Coriolis force and pressure gradient, centripetal force, frictional force, they all result in the gradient winds. Cyclonic conditions are called as subgeostrophic winds, where a centripetal force is going to be strong over here. It strengthens the pressure gradient force, high pressure to low pressure. It is going to strengthen the pressure gradient force, and it also counters the Coriolis force. Anticyclonic are called as super, sub, and then we have the super geostrophic winds, where centripetal forces strengthens the Coriolis force, countering the pressure gradient force. High pressure is in the center, and then low pressure here. Low pressure to high pressure is anticyclonic conditions, right? They are known as super geostrophic winds, subgeostrophic and super geostrophic. In recent climate change, the barometric slope and pressure gradients between the latitudes are rapidly changing, impacting the upper tropospheric wind, weakening the polar vortex, and impacting the weather of mid-latitude like bomb cyclone, heat waves of Europe, omega blocking of Canada. If we look into a final recap, we know what is like geostrophic winds, right? Geostrophic winds are horizontal winds, wind velocity. They are in the upper atmosphere. It is a balance between the pressure gradient force and Coriolis effect, right? The balance between the pressure gradient force is nothing but the force that causes air to move from high pressure to low pressure. Coriolis force is the deflection of the moving air by the Earth's rotation. Now, the barometric slope and air circulation. What is barometric slope? It is a variation in the atmospheric pressure over a given distance, is what we have the barometric slope. The pressure difference creates force that drives the air in the moment. This must be in balance with the Coriolis force to give rise to a geostrophic wind over there. If the balance is disrupted, what happens? Influencing large scale weather patterns and circulation systems of the earth. Now the air is blowing above the ground or the water surfaces. Altitude is 500 to 1000 meter. It is parallel to the isobars. Right angle to the pressure gradient force is what we have the geostatic force. Parallel to the isobars, in the direction of the isobars, that it is right angle to the pressure gradient force. Jet streams, Rossby waves, upper tropospheric westerlies. Now we have example of upper tropospheric westerlies and jet streams in the case when there is a steepness along with low friction, right? It gets deflected due to the Coriolis force. The isobars at an acute angle. Initially they are parallel to isobar, but due to deflection of the Coriolis force, when they are in balance with the parallel to the isobars, when they are in balance with the Coriolis force, but they are deflected at an acute angle over here, we have upper tropospheric westerlies and jet streams, right? Now, frictional forces. When the frictional force, here we have low frictional force. When the frictional force is coming into action, we have the thunderstorms and local winds. When everything put together, gradient winds, we have two types: geostrophic winds and super geostrophic winds. When pressure gradient force is strong, we have the subgeostrophic winds, and it is cyclones. Pressure gradient force are always from the high pressure to low pressure, but we have anticyclones move from low pressure to high pressure. That is why we have the Coriolis force is countering the pressure gradient force, right? First is no friction. What happens when there is no friction? No friction. Here we have the no or low friction, right? First is the friction, and then it is deflected due to the Coriolis force alone. Coriolis force alone. We have upper tropospheric winds or jet streams. Now, when there is a thunderstorm or a local winds, when because of the friction, low friction, friction. The third one is when there is a gradient winds, that is pressure gradient force is greater than the Coriolis force. Pressure gradient force is lesser than the Coriolis force for the gradient winds. Now the next question is, what is ocean ranching? How are aqua cowboys related to such activities? So here there are two terms, right? The first term is ocean is having a ranching. Ocean ranching. And the second term is aqua cowboys. Now what is ocean ranching? Ocean ranching is the practice of we are cultivating and at the same time we are managing the marine species. Controlled environment. You are not just cultivating. You are taking care of it. Therefore, you are also managing the species. Managing the species in the sense you are enhancing its population, right? Managing the species, marine species over here in a controlled environment. Here also the environment is controlled. Environment is also controlled to enhance their population. So we enhance the population, and to in order to enhance the population and to ensure sustainable harvesting for sustainability. Sustainability, ecological balance, these are terms which can be used interchangeably, right? You are cultivating in the sense, and also you are managing the marine species. Apart from cultivation, you are managing. Why are you managing? To enhance its population. You are not, when you are cultivating, for example, when you are cultivating, you are just harvesting everything. It is not enhancing the population of the species, right? So you are managing for sustainability in a controlled environment, right? In the traditional fishing, what is the difference between ocean ranching and traditional fishing? Ocean ranching and traditional fishing, it has few difference, right? In the ocean ranching, we say that we need to cultivate, we are even managing them in a controlled environment for their betterment of the population for sustainability. Now, but whereas we say that in traditional fishing, wild stocks, when you are cultivating something, it is no longer wild, right? When in traditional fisheries, there is a ocean and you go with the marine ships, you do bottom sprawling with the nets and you catch the marine species which are naturally present over there. Those are called as wild stocks. Wild stocks are only in the traditional fishing. In traditional fishing, wild stocks are being exploited directly from their natural habitat. Ocean ranching involves release of hatchery raised or captive bred organisms in the ocean. Right? You are going for wild stocks and you are taking them from their natural habitat, exploiting them from their natural habitat. Whereas in the ocean ranching, you have like hatched, you have eggs, you hatch them in a controlled environment. You hatch the eggs, and when they are little big enough, you go and place them in a controlled area of the ocean, right? So they are called as captive breeding, when where you take male and female adults, you make fertilize them, they lay eggs, and you grow even the eggs to certain size, and then you go and release those in the ocean. That too in the ocean also they are controlled. Here the method aims to boost abundance of targeted species. Only targeted species. You do not do this for all the species. Here we have targeted species. Fish is a targeted species. Shellfish. You have also sea cucumbers, shrimps, oysters. Right. Now, ocean ranching. In ocean ranching, we need to know what is aqua cowboys. Is the individuals who are involved in the ranching process, right? The individuals who are involved in the ranching processes are called as aqua cowboys. Aqua cowboys play a crucial role in activities like you need to capture, rising, releasing the aquatic species, employing techniques in that mirror aspects of traditional cattle ranching but adapted to the marine environment. What you do for the cattle livestock, you need to do the same process or more or less the similar process in the marine environment, right? So cattle ranching is a term you have to correlate with because you have aqua cowboys and this is ocean ranching. Cattle ranching with adopted to the marine environment. Their efforts contribute to the sustainable fishing, conservation and restoration of the marine ecosystem. So we say here that we have the sustainable fishing. You go for conservation, right, as well as the restoration, because this does not cause overstocking, right? We have here, right, over exploitation of wild stocks does not happen in the in the ocean ranching as compared to the traditional fisheries. Ocean ranching or ocean husbandry refers to taming. You are preparing, harvesting and training of the sea mammals like porpoise, dolphins, whales in a marine environment. Now, what in animal husbandry you have cattle, all the kinds of cattle, hence, right, feedstock. Likewise, you have to give a list over here. First is taming of the species. Then you have to harvest and train the sea mammals. We have few sea mammals. One of the best example is the whales and dolphins. Sea mammals like whales, dolphins, and then porpoise in a marine environment. Now, what are the characteristics of ocean ranching? We have certain aim is to utilize the sea, but at the same time it should be done sustainably. We are increasing the and restoring the fishery resources as well. Utilize the sea resources because we are having a large space, right, in the sea to harvest these marine organisms. Utilize the sea resource. Sustainability is also being achieved. Construction of fish reefs and to increase and restore the fishery resources. Increase the fishery resources. So we also increase the fishery resources. The first one is to utilize what all the sea resources which are present, and the second one is sustainability is being achieved, and you're also increasing the fishery resources. What all the species which can be large scale farmed? You have salmon. Some of the fish names must be mentioned over here: prawns, shrimps, oysters, sea cucumber, lobsters, right? Lobsters, crab, corals are also being farmed. Now, we have the two types of ocean ranching: pure ocean ranching and stock enhancement ocean ranching. The fishes are harvested by the releasing agency itself. The fishes are not harvested by the releasing agency. Pure and stock enhancement. Aqua boys are divers and local fishermen. They need to dive inside the water, so they are divers and local fishermen. Fishermen. So they are divers and the local fishermen. They regulate the reaching processes. They regulate the rearing processes. Sorry, they regulate the rearing processes. They are in charge of ensuring the safety from outside fishers, no pollution zones, and proper harvest. Some areas even have dolphins and porpoise trained as aqua boys to help the divers and to carry and bring back tools of repair of anchored ships, relief works, etc. Dolphin and porpoise are acting as a aqua boys, right? Now, what is the roles of aqua boys? They are who are aqua boys? They are divers or even the local fishermen. They regulate the rearing processes. Divers, and then we have the local fishermen. So we'll be having the divers, and then we have the local fishermen who are helpful. Local fishermen who are helpful in the rearing processes. They also have the support of the dolphins and porpoises. Trained as aqua cowboys, to help the divers to carry and bring back tools for the repair of the anchored ships and relief works, etc. We have detailed about the aqua boys as well. Now, benefits of the ocean ranchings is this is diversion from the conventional fishing, right? Blue economy. Proper care of the fisheries gives large returns, contributes to food security, strengthens the aquaculture, enhancement of marine biotechnology, taming and training of the wild sea animals can be useful for many purposes. 71% of the earth is water, and ranching is applied. It will be very efficient, beneficial, right? Now, the importance of ocean and its resources is a topic of world and various initiatives such as blue growth to enable the fisheries and aquacultures are in the United Nations SDG 14. Life underwater. United Nations SDG 14 is life underwater. Right. SDG 14. And related to the conservation and sustainable development of the oceans, seas, marine resources are under processes. India's initiative is PM Matsya Sampada Yojana. So, what is the India's initiative? We have PM Matsya Sampada Yojana, Palk Base Scheme, Blue Economy, and Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Funds are steps in the right direction. We have PM Matsya Sampada Yojana, Palk Base Scheme, Blue Economy, and Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Funds are the steps in the right direction. We are going for a revision. The question is, what is ocean ranching and how are the aqua cowboys related? How are the aqua cowboys related to such activities? Ocean ranching refers to the practice. We have a practice of cultivating, managing the marine species in the controlled environment to enhance the population and sustainable harvesting. Unlike traditional fisheries, wild stocks are exploited directly from their natural habitats. Here we are releasing the hatchery raised or captive bred organisms into the oceans. The method is to boost the abundance of targeted species such as the fish or the shellfish while allowing them to be in a more controlled and regulated approach for resource management. Aqua cowboys are the individuals who involve in the rearing process, ranching process. These aqua cowboys they play a crucial role in activities like capturing, raising, and releasing the aquatic species, employing techniques like mirror aspects of traditional cattle ranching but are adapted to the marine environment. Their efforts contribute to sustainable fisheries conservation and the restoration of marine ecosystems to increase ecological aquaculture fishing characteristics, right? Aim kinds, pure and stock enhancement. Aquavoids are drivers of local fishermen who regulate such rearing processes. They are in charge of safety from outside fisheries, no pollution zones, and proper harvest. Some have dolphins and porpoises that who are trained like aqua cowboys. Diversion from conventional fishing. Now the SDG is 14 related to it, and PM Sampada Matsya Sampada Yojana, Park Based Scheme, Blue Economy, Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Funds. Next, we have to explain the natural processes of soil enrichment and its impact in the food production. Soil enrichment. So, what is soil enrichment? Soil is a natural process by which it plays a vital role in sustaining and enhancing the food production. When the soil is enriched, it leads to the sustainable growth of the plants. Otherwise, we be having that it is going to be depletion of the minerals and it turns into a barren land. Desertification happens if the nutrients are not enriched properly, right? Desertification happens if the soil is not enriched properly. This intricate phenomenon involves a series of biological, chemical, and physical interactions within the soil, fostering an environment conducive to the plant growth. We need to have an environment which is very supportive for the plant growth. The key aspect of soil enrichment is the decomposition of organic matter by the microorganisms. When the organic matter which is present in the soil, organic dead matters are present in the soil, and the decomposition of this organic matter must be take place with the help of microorganisms for soil to be enriched. Now, releasing essential nutrients that contribute to the fertility of the soil. Additionally, natural processes like weathering of the rocks, minerals also enrich the soil with the essential minerals, right? Rocks and minerals they provide the essential nutrients which are important for the soil. The intricate web of interactions between soil organisms, organic matter, and geological processes. We have organisms which are present in the soil. Then these organisms are responsible for the decomposition of organic matter. Plus the geological processes like the weathering of the rocks, weathering of rocks and minerals, they play an important role in increasing the nutrient of the soil, therefore benefiting the plant growth. Why does the soil need to be nutritious? Because this nutrient enrichment of the soil needs to be for the plant growth. Everything is done for the plant growth. So here we have the soil organisms as well as the geological processes. The geological processes like the weathering of the earth's rocks and minerals. Like the weathering, the geological processes is the weathering which is very useful for elements for sustainable agriculture and for resilience of the food production systems in the face of environmental challenges. We need a sustainable agriculture, right? Need for a sustainable agriculture, and we also need the resilience of the food production. The food production must be resilient. resilience of the food production systems in the face of we have environmental challenges. More than billion in the world are facing hunger. More than a billion, right, are facing hunger. The climate change is causing environmental degradation, soil erosion, and soil infertility. It is crucial for conserving the agriculture with naturally enriched soil. Natural processes is decomposition, weathering, deposition of the sediments, nitrification. Then we have organisms which are involved in the soil enrichment. Right. So how does the soil gets enriched? The soil gets enriched to decomposition. Decomposition of the organic matter. Organic matter is what we call it as the manure. Manure enriches the soil, and nitrification, weathering, deposition, and sedimentation. First, decomposition. Major sources of the nutrients come from the decomposed dead trees. Nutrients from the dead trees, decomposed dead trees. So we have nutrients from decomposed dead trees and leaves by microorganisms creating humification. The process is what we call it as the humification. Nitrification, right? Humification is the creation of humus. Then we have the nitrification. Nitrification is nitrogen is fixed by the cyanobacteria, azotobacter, and leguminous rhizobium. Nitrogen is fixed. Nitrification is nitrogen fixation. What is nitrification? Nitrification is the nitrogen fixation. This nitrogen fixation is done by cyanobacteria. A cyanobacteria called as azotobacter and leguminous rhizobium. So for nitrification we have azotobacter and rhizobium. The first one is through the decomposition. Second one is through nitrogen fixation, is nitrification. We also have another keyword called as humification. Weathering, breaking of the rocks is what we have the weathering. Deposition, sedimentation. Weathering of the rocks is a major source of we have sulfate, phosphate mixing with the soil. So for weathering we'll be having the sulfate, phosphate mixing with the soil. What is present in the rocks? Sulfate is present in the rocks and phosphate is present in the rocks. Right. So the mixing of the sulfate and phosphate. Sedimentation is mainly in alluvial soil, fine texture soil, and the water capacity increases. What is happening through weathering? Weathering we are getting sulfate and phosphate, and through sedimentation sedimentation happens mainly in the alluvial soil. Fine texture soil and the water capacity is increasing. Organisms which enrich the soil is mycorrhizal fungi. It helps in the absorption of the minerals. Right. So fungi helps in the absorption of the minerals is what we call it as the fungi which is helping in the absorption of minerals. Mycorrhizal fungi. Earthworm is roaming, breaks the organic material in the soil, helps in the fine textured soil. Now, what are the effects on the plant growth, food production? Why nitrogen is required? For amino acid and protein. It is for the photosynthesis and it is a part of chlorophyll. Leaves growth, for the leaf growth. So, nitrogen is for the amino acids. We all know that nitrogen is for the amino acid. So amino acids are nothing but the building blocks of protein. Nitrogen is amino acid and amino acids are the building blocks of the protein. Now this protein is essential for the chlorophyll itself. Chlorophyll itself, and a chlorophyll is essential for the photosynthesis. Here the leaves growth, is important. Amino acids and protein, we have photosynthesis and part of the chlorophyll, leaves growth. Now what phosphates are important? Phosphorus is important for cell division, and they are the energy for adenosine triphosphate, ATP, right? ATP are energy cells. So phosphates is important for the cell division, as well as they are energy part of the ATP. For phosphates we will be having the ATP. For the sulfur, we have the protein synthesis. For nitrogen, the protein to synthesize, we need sulfur, and even for the leaf growth, enzymes activity. So, sulfur is required for the protein synthesis of the protein. For the synthesis of the protein, we need sulfur. Next, it is for the enzyme activity and protein synthesis and leaf growth. We have potassium. Potassium is for water and food transportation. Potassium is useful for the xylem, water transportation, and phloem for the food transportation. Right, xylem and phloem. Then for water, we have the ion exchange for used for the potassium. Calcium is enzyme function and for the strength. Right, now when you say nitrogen, nitrogen is for the amino acids, right? Amino acids, as well as we have the proteins. Now these are essential for the chlorophyll. Then we have photosynthesis, as well as the leaves strength. Next we have the phosphates are for the energy. Phosphates, they are for the energy, they are used in the ATP, right? So phosphates are again used in the ATPs for the cell, right? So we should remember that ATP, and then we have the cell division. So ATP, and we have the cell division. Phosphates are for the ATP and the cell division. Sulfur is for protein synthesis and leaf growth. Protein synthesis, and then the leaf must grow. Next, potassium is for the ion exchange, and water, potassium, is for the ion exchange. We need the ions to be exchanged, and at the same time the water and the food transportation. Then we have calcium is for the enzyme function again, and we need the strength, right? Now we also have sulfur is for the enzymes. Sulfur for the enzyme activity. Artificially, the soil is enriched through fertilizers, multiple times soil mixing. When you are using fertilizers, multiple times you need to mix the soil. It harms the naturally occurring good microbes. And fertilizers is going to reduce the soil fertility. Now we say here, what are the side effects of fertilizers? They reduce the soil fertility. Artificially, when we are enhancing the soil enrichment through the fertilizers, but they reduce the soil fertility and the soil moisture, even the soil moisture, and it reduces its carbon capacity as well. So soil moisture, and it reduces the carbon capacity as well. Pollution, so we'll be having the pollution, biomagnification, bioaccumulation, eutrophication. Right. Magnification, bioaccumulation, eutrophication. This can be avoided due to using the natural enrichment. Zero tillage farming is when you use the natural soil enrichment processes, and it reduces the seed and water requirements, reduces the nitrogen demand, less the use of fertilizers, and help retain the soil moisture and increase the food production because it reduces the time between two crop cultivation. Soil degradation, poor diets, and nutrient deficient soils contribute to nutrient deficiencies in the crops, which in turn danger the human health. Hidden hunger and natural processes cannot alone solve the problem. The supplements with artificial means processes can do with sustainable agriculture. Deep ecology and shallow ecology, right? Here we have deep ecology and shallow ecology. Deep ecology means both are contrasting perspectives. These of environmental philosophy, environmental geography, right? Offering distinct approaches to our relationship with the nature. Shallow ecology means often associated with mainstream environmentalism, tends to focus on addressing environmental issues with existing societal and economic framework. It emphasizes conservation and preservation to maintain the well-being of the human societies without fundamentally questioning the underlying structures that contributes to the ecological problem. On the other hand, deep ecology involves the root causes of the environmental degradation, advocating more profound transformation in the human attitudes. Developed by thinkers like Arne Nass, deep ecology urges the shift from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism, right? Fostering the deeper connection between the humans and entire ecological web. The philosophical distinction underscores the fundamental divergence between two concepts is shallow ecology addressing the surface level symptoms and deep ecology is aiming to more profound systematic change in our approach to nature. Now, the concept of the deep ecology is by the Norwegian philosopher Arne Nass in 1972 on the backdrop of increased anthropocentrism led environmental degradation. It is easy to understand by reading itself, but once again, let us comprehend. We say the deep ecology and the shallow ecology are two different concepts which are opposite contrasting concepts, right? Here in the shallow ecology we say that it is associated with mainstream environmentalism. Environmental issues are there, we are going to address these environmental issues with the existing societal and economic framework, which with already present framework we have the environmental issues which are addressed using existing societal and economic frameworks, right? But in deep ecology, now we are, let us use, this is the shallow ecology and this is the deep ecology, right? So both are contrasting perspectives. Now, what in environmental, this is an environmental philosophy. There is an environmental issue. We are going to face this issue with the existing societal and economic framework, right? First, for when there is, for example, when we are having a greenhouse gas emissions, high greenhouse gas emissions. When there are very high greenhouse gas emission and carbon dioxide, right? So carbon border adjustment mechanisms, that is the limiting the industry's carbon, is shallow ecology, whereas stopping the entire industry is what deep ecology is. Limiting, or you are having carbon border adjustment mechanisms like carbon exchange, right? Carbon imprint exchanges. Instead of going through this or using carbon cycling, carbon capturing techniques, instead of carbon capturing techniques, you are just carbon capture and storage, you are just stopping the industry itself. First stop the industry, go for ecocentrism, not the industry and again finding some problems. This problem is because of human activities, and again finding some solution which is related to the human activities is deep ecology, right? We have certain issues, and these issues, environmental issues, are addressed with the pre-existing societal and economical framework. Whereas we have the deep ecology tries to understand, answer, without, you need to answer the underlying structure, what is contributing to the environmental problem, industry which is contributing to the environmental problem, and that industry needs to be shut down. The deep ecology concept has been given by Arne Naess, who is a Norwegian philosopher, right? He is a Norwegian philosopher, Arne Naess. Increased anthropocentrism led to environmental degradation. Urges a shift from the anthropocentrism to ecocentrism. We have a deep connection between the humans and entire ecological web. One of the more important names is Arne Naess, who speaks about the deep ecology, right? In deep ecology, the anthropocentrism is to blamed for every environmental crisis. But in shallow ecology, the capitalist nature is valuable as far as it serves the human interest. This is technology based, right? But this is philosophical based. The place of man in the environment is, what is the hierarchy? First we have God. Nature is considered equal to the God. Then we have man. We have, in the shallow ecology, it is God and man alone. Next comes the nature, which is at the discretion of the man. Nature is taken for granted over here. Radical measures. We need to stop using, polluting, greenhouse gas emitting machines like air conditioners, vehicles. But here you are utilitarian lifestyle within certain weeks to reduce the damage of the environment. Little lifestyle changes over here, like converting the transport machines from petrol to green hydrogen here. But in the deep ecology, you are stopping the use of the machine itself. That is how radical you are going over here. This is utilitarian. This is a radical. Gaianism is earth. And here you speak about the sustainable development. Rural perspective towards the nature worship. Now, urban perspective towards the nature. This is a rural perspective, and this is an urban perspective towards the nature. Cut the forest for urbanization, followed by cleaning of the walls. We are going for a recap of deep ecology versus shallow ecology. For we have environmental crisis, we are using the pre-existing societal and economic framework is what we call it as a shallow ecology. Whereas when we are dealing with the deep ecology, what we are questioning underlying structures which is contributing to the ecological problems. The term deep ecology is coined by Arne Næss, is a Norwegian philosopher, towards anthropocentrism led to environmental degradation. It is from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism, human as well as the entire ecological web. Now you have human anthropocentrism is a reason for here, but a capitalist is over here. Capitalist is over here. Capitalist, and then you also have utilitarian. Utilitarian is also over here. So the capitalist as well as the utilitarian. This is philosophical and this is technocratic. God, nature, and then we have the man. Here God, man, and nature. This is extremely radical over here. Utilitarian. We have here anthropocentrism versus capitalism, radical versus utilitarian, Gyanism versus sustainable development using SDG goals, ecological sustainability, rural perspective, urban perspective. The current policies and measures of the government across the globe is being driven by shallow ecology. However, it has received criticism from the deep ecologists who contend a shallow ecologism has further widened the inequalities between the countries. US constituting 5% of the world population, it consumes 17% of the global economy. Electricity. Now, what are the environmental implications of economic geology? Economic geology, environmental implications. The field of economic geology, while crucial for identification and extraction of valuable earth resources. Geology is a study of interior of the earth, right? Geology is the interior of the earth, the surface, from the surface till the interior. So what are present over here? The minerals are present over here. Earth resources are present over here. Making this economical, what are the environmental implications do we face when we are using the resources which are present in the interior of the earth? That is what the question is asking. What are the environmental implications? So what is the environmental implications we face of the economic when you are geology? The field of economic geology is, while crucial for we are identifying and extraction of valuable earth resources, it carries profound environmental implications and warrant careful consideration. Economic geology focuses on the exploration and exploitation of the mineral and energy resources essential for the sustaining modern economies. For example, we have critical minerals. Critical minerals like lithium, which is now important for the green energy and for semiconductors, for the energy storage systems. Right, for green energy, for hydrogen engine, we need lithium batteries to store electricity which is produced by hydrogen. However, the extraction and processing is going to cause environmental challenges, right? From habitat disruption to biodiversity loss of soil and water contamination. The entire habitat is being destructed over there. So habitat disruption. We go for the habitat disruption. Then the biodiversity is also lost. Soil and water is contaminated, right? The first one is habitat loss, because when you are going to extract a resource which is present over here, the trees at the top layer must be destructed completely, right? And the biodiversity is lost. Now the soil must be removed. So here we are removing the soil and we are going deeper. This is the surface. When you remove the soil and add the soil somewhere else, so the soil is being contaminated and nearby water bodies are also contaminated, because mining also have certain chemicals like certain hazardous elements for the species like mercury, poisoning, mercury contamination, cadmium contamination of groundwater, phosphorus contamination. Now, environmental consequences of the economic geology. Economic geology is mining. You need to mine to get the resources, striking a balance between meeting the growing demands for natural resources and mitigating the adverse effects. How will you strike a balance? On the environment remains a paramount challenge for sustainable development of our planet. As we delve into the intricate relationship between economic geology and environment, it becomes imperative to adopt responsible practices and innovative solutions to minimize the ecological footprint associated with resource extraction. Economic geology. This is a branch of the science deals with the earth's resources that is used for economic or industrial development, right? It is a branch which deals with the earth resource when it is used for the economic or industrial development. Its environmental implications. Construction activities, right? Because when you go for affecting the surface, when there is a mining, apart from mining, dam construction, even public infrastructure, when you are constructing something, you have to dig the ground, right? Digging of the ground, not only for the resources but for some infrastructure like the dams. The infrastructure is going to be the dams, public infrastructure, right? It causes the disequilibrium of already isostatically adjusted rocks. The rocks are having isostatic adjustment. Isostatic adjustment. The isostatically adjusted rocks. This affects the equilibrium. This affects the equilibrium of isostatically adjusted rocks, leading to seismicity. Joshimath sinking in January 2023 due to rampant construction activities like the Teri Dam, Rishikesh Karnaprayag railway line and Chardham project. For those Joshimath, we be having the Teri Dam. And then we have the Rishikesh Karnaprayag railway line, and we also had the Chardham project. Teri Dam, Rishikesh Karnaprayag railway line, Chardham project. Mining. Subsurface mining of the solid materials. Mining for the gold. Coal is mined. Even petroleum resources we are going for the extraction in the seabeds, right? They causes the collapse of the overlying surface if left unfilled. It causes the dolomite or limestone lithologies may develop sinkholes. Development of the sinkholes due to the intrusion of groundwater. When it is a dolomite or limestone lithologies, when the rocks are dolomite or limestone, the rocks over here are dolomite, it is a sedimentary rock, and limestone, which is a sedimentary rock, right? If there is a sinkhole, the intrusion of the groundwater and rainwater also. Sinking of a mine in Dhandbad's how Koliri area led to the death of 2 people in June, right? So we have to say that first you do for mining, construction like dams, public infrastructures, disequilibrium. Joshimath is because of the construction of, first thing is a dam, and then a railway line is public infrastructure. Rishikesh Karnaprayag railway line, Teri Dam, and then project, Chardham project, right? Mining, subsurface mining and deep surface mining is also present over here. For the subsurface mining of the coal, we have lignite at Neyveli, gold, copper, gold, Karnataka gold fields, copper K3 mines, Rajasthan, cause the collapse of the overlying structure if it is left unfilled. Now, if it is a dolomite or a limestone, right, it causes sinkholes. So for the dolomite and then we have for the limestone, there is a sinkholes. Intrusion of the groundwater, mining of oil and the gas. Fracking technology is pushing of high pressure water into the rocks. High pressure water is pushed into the rocks, therefore the oil is going to float out, right? High pressure water is pushed into the rock cracks to create a hydrostatic pressure is what we call it as fracking technology. Is when high pressure water is into the rock cracks to create a hydrostatic pressure, leads to the disturbed isostatic balance. These all leads to isostatic balance when there is a construction of the dam. Eustatic balance is also, eustatic is the balance of the water. The eustatic balance is also disturbed over here. When the rocks are being displaced, it is isostatic balance, and this is inducing seismicity. Mining of the oil and then we have the gas. We have fracking technique where you are using high pressure water in the rock cracks to create a hydrostatic pressure. We are creating a hydrostatic pressure, and this is going to disturb the isostatic balance and induces the seismicity. Agricultural activities like flood irrigation with rampant extraction of the groundwater, subsidence of overlying layer due to hydrocompaction. So subsidence, when we are going for the extraction of the groundwater, we say we have the subsidence. This is due to the hydrocompaction. So subsidence, when there is an extraction of groundwater. Extraction of the groundwater causes the subsidence, right? The subsidence is due to the hydrocompaction. Dehradun land subsidence noticed at specific places in Punjab and Haryana at 7 to 12 centimeters per year. This is land subsidence. In Punjab and Haryana, there is 7 to approximately 10 and an average 10 centimeter annually, due to groundwater extraction at a rate of 46 to 236 centimeter annually. Resource prospecting. Study of the resource potential may inadvertently cause illegal mining. Resource prospecting is when you are studying about the resources. Illegal mining, cartelization, disturbed public order. Example is a sand mining which caused widespread impact on the river ecology. Urban development, like infrastructure like the bridges, unbridged encroachment of the river floodplains. Encroachment of the river floodplains. So we'll be having the encroachment of the river floodplains. May cause the flash floods due to the reduced buffer for the expansion of the rivers. Example, Delhi inundation in August 2023 due to the Yamuna overflooding. There is a need of the heart to promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization as determined by SDG 9 and SDG 11.